It's a funny thing in life. People want what they don't have and have what they don't want sometimes, right? Well, the kids leave, and some parents cry, some parents party, right? And then the kids come back, and some parents are party, and some parents cry. And you never know which one it's going to be. Sometimes I think it's which kid came back. But what happens when you're an empty nester with a boomerang child? One that comes back to visit later on and just kind of hangs out longer than you expected. What happens when they bring along a spouse or kids or dogs or a cat? These things are all questions that you need to think about and need to understand. Empty nesting is not all that it is cracked up to be. We're going to tell you why. Hey, welcome to Consider This program. I am your host, Joe Clark.
And I'm Angi, Kinser.
Happy to have you along. Hey, we are talking about new beginnings. And one of those new beginnings for many of us is the empty nest period of time. It's when the last kid leaves home, hopefully for the last time. Doesn't always work out that way, but that's the idea behind being what an empty nester really is. So Angie's got some financial questions that she wanted to ask me. So I will do my best to, I'm an empty nester by definition. Don't tell Othello, my dog. He would object to that. And when I left home, we have a grand dog that's running around. So I don't know about this empty nesting business. But in theory, Barb and I are empty nesters.
I am as well. I have a college student who's now moved out. So I'm kind of an empty nester too. And it's a little bit more emotional but we're going to talk about financially. So
there you go.
Alrighty. When the kids are finally gone and you free up a little bit in the budget, do you recommend upping your retirement savings or using that extra money to maybe pay down any last things like the house or something like that?
Really, really, really great question. And I will tell you that let's go to the end. Your life after work, retirement, is based on you being able to replace or support your standard of living and not your income. It's able to support your standard of living. So in the world of haves and have-nots, you have that similar situation in the empty nesting world, right? I have more money going out supporting an empty nest household than I had when they lived at the house, right? And that's why you hear me use the term are your kids financially neutral, right? And it's tough starting out. This is it's not an easy world, right? And so, we got kids in college and, so we're supporting and doing things like that. And a lot of you that are listening to this show totally understand what I'm talking about. So sometimes when kids move out, things become more expensive. Sometimes it truly does free up income. Here's what I will tell you. Keeping in mind that your life after work is based on maintaining that standard of living, not replacing your income. The last thing that you want to have happen in any new beginning or in any change in life is your standard of living to dramatically rise. You've been saving and accumulating money in your retirement all these years based on the amount of margin, as Andy Stanley would say, that you have in your budget, right, to be able to use. Now, suddenly, let's say you're one of the haves, right, and you've got an extra $1,000 a month that you were spending before on car insurance and phones and everything else, and now you've got an extra $1,000. Now, it's really, really easy to take that $1,000 and to increase your standard of living, right? Mm-hmm. Which means, dear Angie, and when you go to your life after work, it means Joe over here has got to find another $1,000 a month to squeeze out of your retirement accounts in order for you to maintain that same standard of living, right?
Right.
So you asked the question, should you pay down debt or should you save it? I'll tell you either is fine, just don't spend it, okay? Once you get to an age, it's the more you put into accounts, the more you save and accumulate, the more you're going to have. But when you get to a certain age, assuming that you've saved appropriately along the way, mm-hmm. right? What I add to my 401k this year doesn't have near as much to do with the growth of what the market does or doesn't do to my 401k this year. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Right? That doesn't mean I'm not going to put the money in because it does add. It certainly means that I'm not going to take the money out and go spend it because that's going to increase that standard of living that I have to be able to replace later on. So the one thing you want to do is not get used to using it. If you're paying down debt, I wouldn't pay down debt with mortgage rates where they are today, right? If I had credit card debt or, high interest on some other loan that was out there, you bet your sweet bippy I would be paying it down. But it's the one thing you don't want to do is put it in your billfold and spend it and use it.
So, how does the loss of a dependent impact your
It really
return?
doesn't that much anymore, unless you're in the very lower income. Now, we don't know what's going to happen between now and the end of 2025. On January 1st of 2026, the tax code reverts back to where it was in 2017. Currently, we lost the dependent deduction, right, in exchange for an increased standard deduction, massively increased, almost doubled. So this was a big number. Families obviously had multiple children that were dependents, really didn't get the best end of the deal. People like me who didn't have dependent children really got a pretty good deal out. It worked out reasonably well, right? So it really depends in the situation you're in. We don't know what happens in 2025. For the lower income people, there are certainly some credits and things like that they were able to get based on dependents. But it's, that's not the average person who's listening to the show.
Okay, talking about standard of living, when do you recommend the best window is for travel and things like that you might want to do or have planned?
Let's go back to that extra money,
Okay.
right? And let's say you found that $1,000. So this is one of the confusing things about standard of living. And my brother, and if you've listened to the show a long time, I apologize because I've said this multiple times, but it just is so impactful, I think, to people to understand. John was in Haiti the day after the earthquake hit. And he called me that night to let me know that he was safe. And he said, Joe, they're singing and praying and being, praising in the streets. And I said, John, they didn't have anything yesterday. They don't have anything today. Right? I mean, it's their standard of living hadn't changed just because there'd been an earthquake. Now, the people who lost family, that was a different story. It was a very tragic time. But when I look at standard of living, it's that month after month after month after month after month thing. It's the going out to eat 2 or 3 times a week. It's the golf club. It's it's whatever you do on a regular basis. Right? You're never going to hear me tell you, and that's another one of our uniquenesses at FEG, is we do not teach you to hoard money. I want you to be able to use your money, enjoy life. I want to make sure you don't run out, but it's not my intention to help you have $5 million at 90 where you have a lot of money and no life.
Yeah, sometimes people wait too long.
If it's money that you wanted to use, right? Now, I will squeeze every nickel. That's my job. But we want you to have the life that you saved for, and one not of fear and one of anxiety, but one of practicality and happiness. So I would not tell you to take that newfound money and get a new cable package. I would not tell you to take that newfound money and find an ongoing monthly bill that's going to last the rest of your life. When you give up chocolate to lose 40 pounds, you can do that. You can't lose 40 pounds and then give up chocolate. That leads to anger management, right? Yeah. And so what happens with people with not understanding that retirement is about standard of living, what happens is people will add things to their lives. And I will regularly hear people say, well, when I retire, I'm going to get rid of cable, or I'm going to go to boxed wine, or I'm going to quit the country club, or, I'm going to get rid of, I'm not going to buy any more new cars. And it's kind of like, listen, you can't hit a goal and then begin to deprive yourself. If you're going to do that, do those things now so that you've reduced your standard of living so that you can retire feeling like you had the same life you had the day before. So now we've got this extra $1,000 a month because the kids are gone, right? Yeah. And I mean, this is a fairy tale. But anyhow, going to Italy for a bucket list trip and spending, whatever it takes to be able to get over there and go do that one time, that is not adding to standard of living. That's adding to life and to memories. And I would strongly encourage it and suggest it. What we know by looking at national data is discretionary spending tends to peak at age 65. Now, in my practice, think about it. The people have had most likely better access to health care. They have assets, so they wouldn't be part of the FEG family. Right, so they've saved, accumulated, and most of them weren't out at bars at 3:00 last night. Right, so we've taken better care of our bodies for the most part. We see discretionary spending peak at 68, and you can just watch the distributions on charts that we have that track that. And at 68, it just begins to decline. You still have the money that you need for your fixed expenses. That's those requirements that you have at home. But that social spending that we call it, the fun stuff, the desire to go to the Grand Canyon, to go to Italy, those kind of things really begins to fall off at 68. I would encourage you, when you ask this answer then, to make sure that you're trying to do those trips somewhere between 62 and 68. We never know what happens in our experience as people get to be near 68. They can't get away from their grandkids. They can't get away from a doctor, or the comfy couch just feels too comfy. And, a year of COVID, has kind of made a lot of us feel that, I'm much more acclimated to my house now than I was in March.
Oh, yeah.
It's kind of like, okay, I know what this chair feels like. Right.
So when you're an empty nester, is this a good time to reevaluate your policies, life insurance, car insurance, all these?
I think it's one of the things that at the Financial Enhancement Group, we help people do every year when we do your family update, and we go over those questions about the types of contracts that you have. Are we optimizing them in terms of what we're paying for what we're getting? And do you need that? And a lot of times life changes and with changes in tax codes, with changes in family setting, you don't need some of the stuff that you had before. Or it can be done in a more efficient manner and fashion. But yes, those are some of the things that need to be constantly looked at. Under the current tax code, one of the things you look at is who the beneficiaries need to be of some of the insurance. Should we skip our spouse and go directly to our children, or go to a different type of trust?
You mentioned boomerang children that come back home after you were empty nesters. I mean, should you factor in some financial support in case an adult child comes back, or?
Well, you always want to have some margin, right? Just in case. I don't ever believe in helping somebody do something with the belief that they might fail. I'm always looking for the best side of the deal. But still being risk adverse and managing things. So I don't think I've ever told anybody you need to save up some money because that kid ain't going to make it. That's I've never had that conversation. I doubt if I do. So I'm not going to tell you to do that on the radio. But you do want to be prepared, and don't be hard on yourself or hard on them if it doesn't work out. We live in crazy times. And more people they're starting to leave home, right? And they're starting, 30-year-olds are buying their first house, but it is happening. Hey, you're listening to Consider This Program. I am your host, Joe Clark, 800-928-4001, yourlifeafterwork.com. Giving Angi a call. Get signed up for a Next Steps meeting, 800-928-4001.